Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered for Friday, May 31st, 2019, a Bowie State student set to graduate murdered by white supremacists in Maryland. But why won't the U.S. Army acknowledge his military rank and honor him in death? We will talk with his family right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Also, there's a major battle in California with charter schools, and a sister, Margaret Fortune, beats back the teachers' unions as well as her own state representative who wanted to cap charter schools. We'll talk live with her in that ongoing battle. Also, Trotwood, Ohio is largely a black town devastated by tornadoes. Why aren't they getting the same kind of support that other cities are getting? Plus, Chicago black folks lost billions of dollars to predatory lending contracts. If you want to understand the issue of black wealth white gap, the black and the white wealth gap today, this is a major issue. We're talking about more than $3 billion. Also, New Hampshire is the latest state to repeal its death penalty. And for the first time, Grambling State University has a female band director. We'll tell you who she is. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. Yeah, it's Uncle Roro, y'all. Yeah, it's Roland Martin. Yeah, rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best. You know he's Roland Martin now.
2 weeks after Richard Collins was commissioned as a lieutenant in the United States Army, he was tragically murdered in Maryland by a white supremacist because he died before he received an active duty. The Army has refused to honor him as a lieutenant or grant him any military acknowledgement. Here to talk about Second Lieutenant Collins' story is his father, Richard Collins Jr., and retired Lieutenant Colonel Arthur Govan. Hi, both of you.
We're well.
Sir.
This is, first of all, this is a story that we covered initially when it happened. Your son was standing at a bus stop, and white man comes up, says one thing to him. Next thing you know, he's murdered. So take us through what you've had to deal with in terms of the military not honoring your son.
Well, Roland, the first thing was after this happened, during the days following, we contacted his ROTC commander to get assistance in procuring honors for him at his funeral, his homegoing. And we were denied, and we were told that he was not eligible for military honors because he had not yet checked into his first command. He had not been, quote unquote, formally inducted into active duty.
Now, he spent all 4 years. How long was he at Bowie State? He spent all those years in ROTC.
Well, he was at Bowie State for 4 years, yes, and he spent 4 years and 3 years under scholarship, ROTC scholarship.
I know I had lunch on Wednesday in New York with Paul Rykoff, co-founder of IAVA, and he said they have been, of course, helping you guys with this, and you've had to deal with all sorts of different things, including getting an ambulance invoice, they did as well. And so you had to deal with all kinds of drama over the murder of your son.
Yes, after the event, after the homegoing service, in the next week or so, bills for ambulance services, medical services, and anesthesiologists all showed up in our mail. And were charged to us that we had to pay those. So we sought assistance throughout both the county and state and federal legislators to try and get assistance with that.
You had other folks who've been in the military who obviously are standing with you. Lieutenant Colonel Govan, let's talk about this. I mean, is this normal? Why, if it is, why should the Army grant an exception?
Well, It is normal, and it's part of our processes and procedures. Like any organization, the Army has regulations and policies that they must adhere to. Unfortunately, in this situation, Second Lieutenant Collins was not on active duty yet, but he was en route there. Again, the Army must, look at every obstacle or every precedence that this actually falls into before they can actually make a decision like that, of that nature.
And what argument would you make? What are you saying to them why they should grant this exception?
Right. We understand that this is policy and procedures in the Army and that he was not on active duty yet. However, the Collins family are asking for an exception to its policy. And like many policies, there are always exceptions that can be made.
Are you aware of other exceptions?
Not in this instance, no. But however, in the Army, there's all kinds of exceptions to any policy within the Army. In this case, what we would like the Army to do is make an exception in this case on behalf of Second Lieutenant Collins.
What has been the response from members of Congress, United States senators?
Our congressman has worked with the Army, and they're still currently talking with the Army to try and bring resolution to this, as well as both of our senators from the state of Maryland are aware. So there has been communications. So far, it hasn't brought about a suitable remedy. So we're still engaging with our representatives from Maryland to bring some sort of suitable remedy to this situation.
Obviously, the funeral is over, but so what specifically do you want the Army to do?
Specifically, we want to have our son redesignated as being on active duty. In addition, being eligible for all military honors, even though he's already since been laid to rest, but those honors still can be rendered, and also to receive the benefits accorded to any service member who's killed on active duty.
When you think about this case, first of all, I know the state of Maryland decided not to charge with hate crimes. Have you heard anything from the Department of Justice on this case?
No, let me correct you on that. The state of Maryland has not determined it's not a hate crime. Right. The federal authorities have commented that they could not find in the federal statutes enough evidence to declare a hate crime.
But the bit man who was charged in his death, Maryland is going after him. What's the designation?
They're first-degree murder and a hate crime.
And so the U.S. attorney made that determination.
That was their statements, but keep in mind the U.S. attorneys do not have jurisdiction in the case of our son. He was murdered on the campus of the University of Maryland, which is the state's jurisdiction, and specifically Prince George's County. So he falls under the state's attorney for Prince George's County's jurisdiction. And
have they set a trial date as of yet?
Yes, the trial date has been set for July 22nd. A motions hearing was scheduled yesterday due to some difficulties, unexpected. It got postponed, and now the motions hearing is rescheduled for Wednesday, the 5th of June.
Lieutenant Colonel Govan, how are you also mobilizing other members of the military who active or also retired to help in this?
Well, there are a lot of, actually my friends from the military that I've seek advice and guidance from. And so let's go back to Mr. Collins' point about we want an exception to the policy. Again, that's a process, and it takes a while to actually move that process along. With anything in the Army, there's always a process and procedure and a stumbling block. In this case, we have to get the information, the right information to the right decision makers in the military who can actually grant this exception to policy on the behalf of Second Lieutenant Collins. And at this point, we have not, and for me, from my perspective, we have not reached the decision-making authority who can actually grant or even consider to grant this exception to policy.
And who specifically is that?
Well, there are several general officers. A general officer is a decision-making authority. Correct a general officer who needs to do this, we have not been able to reach this person yet, this officer yet. However, working with the Secretary of Army in the Senator's office, we are looking to make a meeting or set up a meeting to actually speak to some of the general officers who actually have the authority to make this decision, but that has not occurred yet.
All right, then. Well, we certainly appreciate both of you coming on the show to share this with us, and certainly good luck in trying to make it happen.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, folks, going to go to a break. We come back, Roland Martin Unfiltered. We'll talk about a variety of issues, including a town in Ohio hit hard by tornadoes, plus what's going on in California when it comes to charter schools. One sister, she has beaten back the teachers union for now. What are her plans next? All of that next to Roland Martin Unfiltered. Back in a moment. You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it. Hey, folks, they're back. MarijuanaStock.org is another great investment opportunity. If you were lucky enough to invest in their last crowdfunding campaign, you know they raised a lot of money in just a few months investing in legal marijuana farms. Those initial investors now own shares of a publicly traded company. They are certainly on fire. The last time, of course, many of you missed it. Y'all been emailing me. Now you have an opportunity this time for this new investment opportunity that is as good, if not even better, than the last time. I'm talking about industrial hemp CBD. For those who don't know, the hemp plant is a cousin to marijuana with a much higher concentration of CBD, which means hemp CBD gives you all of the medical benefits of marijuana without getting you high. Until recently, hemp farming was practically illegal in the United States and heavily regulated by the DEA. However, the 2018 Farm Bill recently passed in Congress, making it legal to grow hemp CBD in the U.S. and creating one of the largest commodities worldwide. They need land to grow all of the plants, and this certainly makes for an incredible investment opportunity. And that's where our good friends at 420 Real Estate come in, and their business model is very simple. They buy land that supports hemp CBD grow operations and lease it to licensed, high-paying tenants. That's right, they are hemp CBD landlords, and you can get in on the action. And you can invest in this crowdfunding campaign for as little as $200 up to $10,000. Like I said, you don't want to miss out. Many of you did the first time. Now you have a second opportunity to invest. Go to marijuanastock.org. That's marijuanastock.org. Folks, if you want to get in the game, you certainly must do it now. All right, folks, there's a battle between public and, first of all, traditional public schools and charter schools in California. But it's not really between the schools. It's really the forces who do not want more charter schools in the state of California. There was a state representative who introduced a bill that would cap charter schools because he says that they're taking money from various local districts, making it harder for them to balance their books. A couple of weeks ago, you remember I went to Sacramento and hosted a town hall there for Margaret Fortune of the Fortune School because she has been fighting these particular bills. I'm talking about fighting them hard. Well, guess what? Last week, the California Assembly narrowly passed legislation that would give local school districts sole authority to approve new charter schools based upon how they impact their budgets, but also they defeated the bill when it came to capping those charter schools as well. Here to talk about this is Margaret Fortune. She's the president and CEO of the Fortune Schools. Margaret, how you doing?
I'm fabulous. It's good to be on the air with you, Roland.
All right, then. Glad to have Margaret here. So, folks, is Margaret by phone or Skype? So
by phone.
Okay, all right, then. So let's talk about what actually took place here. First and foremost, these bills that were introduced, the state rep who represents the area where you're from there in Sacramento put these forward, even though, one, his wife sits on the Sacramento School Board, and two, of the schools in the whole state with the highest performing places where black students go, 3 of those 10 schools in the state are your schools in his district.
That's right. And, I have to name names, Roland. Kevin McCarty, who's a member of the California Legislative Black Caucus, authored a very controversial bill to cap the growth of charter schools in California, such that a new school would not be allowed to open unless an existing school would close. a very tight cap that almost amounted to a moratorium on charter schools. And this is despite the fact that Black students are severely underserved by district-run schools. In fact, they're the lowest performing subgroup other than students with special needs. And despite the fact that many of the highest performing charter schools serving a majority Black student population are in his district.
So he put this forward. Obviously, the teachers union, they've been pushing this in the state. You had the strike in Los Angeles that was really around charter schools as well. And what still baffles me, and give our audience an understanding, how many kids are in public schools in California, and how many of those kids are in charter schools?
We have about 6.6 million kids in public schools in California, and about 660,000 are in charter schools. Looked at it in a different way, 90% of public school kids in California are in traditional district-run schools. So this whole debate happening in such a heated way in California is about what's happening in 10% of the system. And in the California context, all charter schools are nonprofit. Our state outlawed, for example, for-profit charter schools, which you'll hear Bernie Sanders talking about. And also, you see concentrations of charter schools in largely urban areas where families, particularly African-American families, are concerned about the quality of education. Some of these statistics are just astounding, Roland. When you look at the performance of African-American students in mathematics, for example, 80% of Black kids in California cannot do mathematics at grade level. 80%. If you look at English language arts, 68% of Black kids can't read or write at grade level. So quite understandably, Black parents, low-income parents, Latino parents are looking for free options within the public school system. And what you had in this blue wave over California is the teachers union led by the California Teachers Association that represents, about 300,000 members and is the wealthiest lobby in California, try to take advantage of the positioning of California as the head of the resistance, to use it as an opportunity to say that they needed to beat back charter schools. And you mentioned the LA teacher strike. LA had a recent teacher strike, so did Oakland. And a political tactic in those strikes were for those school district boards, as a part of their collective bargaining agreement with their teachers unions, to adopt resolutions that pointed to charter schools as the reason why they couldn't balance their budgets, and therefore called for a halt to all new charter schools. The reality of the situation, Roland, is that school districts have skyrocketing pension costs, skyrocketing health care costs. They're making agreements in many of these cities brokered by the mayors that are multi-year compensation agreements that they can't afford. And therefore, they're setting themselves up for fiscal insolvency and bankruptcy and state takeover. And rather than deal with the very difficult reality of that, they've scapegoated charter schools. And in the past week, that has been a massive fail as it relates to the concept of a charter cap, which Kevin McCarty, this gentleman I was talking about, authored legislation to do, but also a charter moratorium that we saw co-sponsored by the California Teachers Association and also the NAACP.
The state NAACP. But there were breakaway chapters. There were different chapters who disagreed with the state branch of the NAACP and stood with you.
That's why this debate has just been fascinating. So recently, in 2016, the state NAACP and the national NAACP approved a resolution that there should be a moratorium on charter schools across America. And the origin of that resolution was in California. That's where it came from.
Alice
So-
Huffman, who's on the national board, who is over the California State NAACP.
And she championed this along with a fellow named Julian Vasquez-Hillig, who is a union-affiliated faculty member from Sacramento State University, the university that's in my backyard. And they ran it all the way to the national level. And then Alice Huffman had town hall meetings all across America, which were basically food fights between charter school leaders and local teachers unions. Not a productive conversation at all. But fast forward from 2016 to 2019, where we are today, and they're actually sponsoring legislation in the California Senate to have a charter school moratorium. Well, this week, that moratorium bill went down in flames. It wasn't able to get out of the House of Origin, and was an important evolution in the story is that there were 3 breakaway chapters or branches of the NAACP: San Diego, San Bernardino, and South Riverside, all in the southern part of the state, who adopted resolutions with extensive data about the underperformance of black kids in California public schools and said, enough is enough. We don't need to have a charter school moratorium. We need to be supportive of all public school options available to our families, and we should be holding all schools accountable, charter schools and traditional government-run schools alike. The other thing that's interesting in this conversation is that then there was a pile-on of civil rights groups that opposed this anti-charter legislation that was being advanced by the CTA, the California Teachers Association, all of the urban leagues in the state of California, all of Al Sharpton's National Action Network chapters in the state of California, all weighed in on the side of charter schools, saying, in light of the data, our families need choices in the public school system. And as black people, we ought not be trying to shutter schools that are doing right by black kids. And as a matter of fact, we should be encouraging them.
I want you, just one more time. You said 80% of black kids are not on grade level in which category?
In mathematics.
And 68%
80%.
The 68%
in reading and writing.
Gotcha. All right, then. So, Margaret, last question. What's next? Because Kevin McCarty has said he said the fight is not over.
The fight is not over, and it's not over because there's a really detrimental bill that did make it through the process. It's actually by a guy named Patrick O'Donnell, a legislator out of Long Beach, California, who is the chair of the Assembly Education Committee. And this bill that made it out of the Assembly and is now primed to go to Senate Education, probably in a July timeframe, would take away all of the appeal rights of charter schools. So no due process for charter school petitioners who are seeking to open a new school. And it would say that if a school district thinks that the charter school will cost them money by taking away enrollment, that would be a reason to deny the school. So, and always the charter schools are going to cost the district school enrollment because the money follows the child. It's not the district that has an entitlement to those taxpayer dollars. It's the child. And the money follows the child to the public school that educates them, and that includes charter schools because charter schools are public schools. So that's the next fight.
Yep.
I'm serving on a task force that the governor, Gavin Newsom, appointed to look at these issues and make a recommendation. So reasonable legislators like our chair of the California Legislative Black Caucus, Shirley Weber out of San Diego, who has been quite the champion, reasonable legislators are waiting for the governor's task force to issue their report.
Gotcha. All right, Margaret Fortune, president and CEO of the Fortune Schools. We appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much, Roland.
All right, again, folks, the video you were seeing there, that was from the town hall that I moderated in Sacramento there with Margaret Fortune in the Fortune Schools just a few weeks ago in Sacramento. Joining us right now, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, economist, president emerita, Bennett College, Dr. Cleo Monago, social political analyst, and activist, Lauren Victoria Burke, writer, and NNPA. Cleo, I saw your response when you heard 80% failure and then 68% failure.
80% failure in mathematics, 68% failure in reading. I was wondering if that was statewide.
It was statewide. Now, here's the crazy thing. And again, when I was there, it was crazy. Of the top 10 schools in the entire state where African Americans are performing at high levels, 3 of them, 3 out of the 10, she runs. 3 out of those 3 are in the district of the state rep who wants to cap charter schools. But here's what's the craziest part. He also had in the bill that if Julian had a charter school and Lauren, who ain't never had a school, wanted to replace a new charter school, you, who's already successful, can't apply to replace the one that failed.
But what's the excuse? What is the explanation to justify what appears to be a irrational decision?
In the state of California, the biggest critics of charter schools are the teachers union, because they are advancing this idea that school districts, as she said, can't balance their budgets because of charter schools, which is illogical if 90% of all kids in the state go to traditional schools. How is it you can't balance the budget because 10% go to charters?
Because it's not privately
But,
funded,
you know,
it's
Roland,
publicly funded.
Sister Fortune's
and when it's
work
publicly
is well
funded,
known.
obviously they won't have the money.
Finish. I'm going to get
Yeah, so obviously charter schools take part of public money. So wouldn't the answer to this be to improve the public school system rather than to create a new thing?
But here's the deal. Are they improving?
Well,
80,
no,
68.
but we're not trying to fix them. We're trying to create a new thing.
No, actually, no, supposedly they are trying to fix them.
And my thing is charter schools are fine, but privately fund them.
No, but here's the deal,
Privately
though.
fund them.
But the charters are public. They're actually public schools.
Then why don't we
They're
improve
using
the
money.
public? They're using public money.
And that becomes a challenge. Sister Fortune's work is well known, well documented. She's doing good work. At the same time, Roland, I have some pushback around the charter school movement from any number of reasons. Her schools are good. All of them are not. You quoted the statistics. Right. You said 86% can't do mathematics.
80% are not on level with mathematics.
And 68%
in language and arts.
How does that compare to public schools?
Right.
I mean, because that's the question. No, that's the question. Charter schools do better.
That is, one second.
No.
Now, you asked the question. That's the state. Those are public schools. That's the state's numbers.
How are her schools different? What she did not do in this conversation is say, my schools do this, which is different from those schools. So here's what I know.
Right?
Here's what I know.
Hold on. When you say do different, what do you mean?
What are her statistics?
Results.
What are her results? What are her statistics? Because here's what I know for sure, is that 90% of most kids are going to public schools.
Right.
My effort as an activist, as an educator, is going to be to improve the quality of public schools. I don't have a problem with charter schools. Alice Huffman is a friend and a colleague. I think she's come a little hard and she hasn't really quite expressed herself appropriately.
No, she's expressed herself. She's just wrong.
No.
Because black parents ain't buying it.
Well, black parents are not buying it.
And when I say black parents are not buying it, we literally commissioned Cornell Belcher to do a poll specifically on black parents and their thoughts on charter schools and vouchers. More than 70% of black parents who were polled, when you talk about a Republican pollster, said, I'll put my kid in a charter or a voucher. And here's why. Because this is the problem, this is the conundrum that we are in. Black parents ain't got time to talk about contracts, civil rights groups, unions. They're saying, my kid, not learning.
You're right.
That's what they're saying.
Here's what you're right about. Black parents want the best thing for their kids.
Of course.
Whatever it is. But we had a education summit at Push Excel on March 17th, which was the anniversary of Brown versus Board. Nicole Hannah-Jones, who's a writer for the New York Times, came and she talked about her work and the ways that we, all of us, middle-class people, can support public schools. And I mean, at the end of the day, you can cream a few off, you could take 10%. What happens to everybody else?
But hold on. See, this
And
is,
the majority
this
is in public school system.
But this
so
is,
improve the public school system. And you're right to say that black parents don't have time for that talk. That's true. Let's improve where most of the black kids are.
But wait a minute,
That's the
hold on.
public school system.
But here's what's interesting to me. When we say, first of all, I agree, let's improve the public school system.
Absolutely.
But we're still waiting. They're literally.
Why are we waiting?
We're waiting. No,
because
we're waiting.
siphoning off the money.
No, you're not. No, you're not. You're not. No.
These-
First of all,
these
no,
charter schools
you're
are
not siphoning the money off. Because how can you be
You are siphoning the money.
No, you're not.
If the money
is
follows
going
a child,
Right.
The money follows a child.
That's public
Let's
money.
say that every child has $5,000.
I need y'all to explain to me, how is 10%?
Some of it's public
Hurting
money,
tonight.
Roland. Some of it's public money. I mean,
No,
that's,
it's-
you're not private.
It's all public
it's
money, Laura.
illogical.
It's all public
But
money.
Roland, there's another issue here. The other issue here that maybe was discussed in some other program is that these schools don't know how to educate black children. And
Hello?
Dr. Fortune's.
and I want to mention.
No, hold on right there. So Dr. Fortune's schools know how to educate
Yeah,
black kids.
I have no issue
Well,
with-
guess what? Well, hell, I'd rather have Dr. Fortune educate more black kids.
She's the
I
exception
have
and
no
not the
issue
rule.
with her work. I have no issue with her work.
Right.
I have an issue with the erosion of public education and everything that it stands
No,
for.
but we're
That's
still.
what I have
Wait,
to
hold
say.
on. But Cleo just said, wait a minute. If they're doing it because they know how to educate black kids, I was just at J. Zoo School yesterday in Philadelphia. We had a town hall 2 nights ago. I'm in Philadelphia. This is a Jesuit school, independent school, not tied to the archdiocese there. 450 students. 90% of the students there on free and reduced lunch. So I can't hear Diane Ravitch yell, oh my God, are they poor? Oh, they real poor. 450 kids. 90% of their kids graduate, 85% go to college. Oh, and it's open enrollment. Nobody can say, well, they pick and choose. Here's what I'm
Roland, but that's unusual. Come on, that's unusual.
Wait a minute. So here's what I need to understand. If you in Philadelphia, go to their school and say, to your point, Cleo, what are they doing to get those results? And we might want to replicate it. That's my problem when we talk about this deal here, because parents are not trying to wait for that mystical, magical day when the grand plan is unveiled, because you know what? They've been waiting for decades. Cleo, go ahead.
But one of the things I think needs to be said to the audience and to black children probably watching this so they won't be demoralized is the inability to properly educate you has nothing to do with your intelligence level. It has nothing to do with you being deficient. It has to do
Absolutely.
with these systems being culturally out to lunch and unable to understand your path in this society in ways that get you focused enough to learn and take advantage of your genius and your intelligence. This has nothing to do with you being deficient. I want to make that clear.
Absolutely.
Because we keep on putting out these 80% and 68%. That's why I almost fall to cheers like, that's crazy. And I'm from California, and I met all kinds of brilliant black children, because I was among them, that knew how to get through these systems, but it was difficult because the systems were not affirming of black children. And I think, I'll close with this,
Well,
that
no
there is...
system
And I'm
has
going
ever
to laugh
been
because
affirmed.
I was a black child who got put out of so many high schools and wasn't even...
Cleo, go ahead.
I think
Finish.
the inability to work well and succeed with black children is connected to some kind of systemic level of resistance to affirming black children.
Here's what I'm still trying to understand. This is real basic for me. If there are traditional schools that work, and there are charters that work, and the numbers are there, why can't they coexist?
There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is that
But that's not what they want.
You're focusing. What I don't understand about this is that why can't the focus be on fixing what's broken in the public school system?
Because that is
where
resistance.
Where most
Because
of the
that is
schools are. Where
because
most
that
of the
is
schools- There's always
because
resistance.
we have been
There's
waiting
always
for that
resistance.
since
There's
the
always
creation of
resistance.
public schools.
No kidding.
And
There's
it ain't
always
happened.
resistance. It's always resistance. I mean,
the basis of public education has always been tracking. And what we've had in the last 40 years as a resistance to that. We've had black folks being elected to school boards. We've had people make differences. But the fact is that, no, anything that's public is not going to help black people. And most things that are private are not going to help black people. I just think,
So hold up. So if anything that's public ain't gonna help black people, what the hell are we talking about?
Well, what are the stats?
Well,
across
Roland,
the board
we talk
for charter
about-
Well,
schools?
what's
what are the
missing-
stats across the board for charter schools?
No, see, that's what I'm saying right
But
here.
see, and
This
Laura-
is, no,
What
no,
are
no,
the
no.
stats-
Hold
what
on,
are the stats across
hold
the
on.
board?
I'll
And,
pull
and
it
if,
up.
and if you look
different?
across
Are
the
they
board,
better?
Here's
they're
the
not
deal.
better.
Here's
They're
the
not
deal.
better.
If you lay out,
They're
not better.
first of all,
I
you lay
know.
out across the board, which I've said consistently, across the board,
Right.
you've got good, medium, bad.
Right, absolutely.
And what,
No better.
hold up.
Absolutely.
And so
Right.
what I'm saying,
They're no better than
what-
those
so what-
schools.
no, wait a minute. So what I'm saying is, why is it?
I mean, we can cherry
hold up.
pick schools,
I'm trying to
just like
answer.
we
No,
can
answer
cherry pick-
this. Why is it we can't go, if these work traditional,
Yeah.
and these work charter, and these don't work traditional, and these don't work charter, how about we get rid of what don't work
Absolutely.
and not go, well, I know that charter works, but we need to go ahead and get rid of it.
Roland.
Because
No, that's not
There's
what
no-
anybody says.
there's
Roland.
no,
That's not what
Julian,
anybody's
you're
saying.
wrong.
There's no
That's what they're
evidence
saying
that
in
charters are
California.
better.
Well,
They,
there's-
Julian,
That's-
hold on.
but
No,
that's
no.
a mistake.
No,
See,
hold on. Let
that
me help
school
y'all out
is
with
better.
the bill. Let me
That
help you with
school
the bill.
is better.
They literally,
That school is better.
This is how illogical the bill is. If you're Margaret Fortune.
We're not arguing how logical.
No, well,
it is.
no,
we're not.
no, we
No,
are.
I agree.
Because I'm trying
We
to tell
agree.
you.
We agree.
No,
Across
but I'm trying to
the board,
explain to you
Fortune
why
does
they
good work.
created what they did.
There's no argument, Roland.
Wait, no, wait a minute.
We agree with
Because
you.
in California, literally, Margaret Fortune, if the bill had passed, the bill would have said, if a charter school failed, that was not, and Margaret Fortune says, I want to take that over with my results. The law says you can't.
Right.
You can't. We'll go ahead and let somebody who's unproven
Right.
take it over, but a proven leader can't. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
No one's disagreeing.
And it's pretty normal.
No one's
It's pretty
disagreeing.
normal.
Well, there are three lines to this conversation.
You still
One-
have Margaret there?
Oh, we have one
Is that
line.
somebody said, okay, I'm going to pull Margaret up because she's still there. I realized she was still there. Go ahead.
Okay, there's one line that talks about what Dr. Fortune is doing for
Right.
good work.
Right.
There's one line that talks about what public schools should do, can do.
No. I ain't telling what they should
listen
do.
to me.
What they are doing.
Well, no.
Not should.
Let's talk about
Should
the public
is
school
hypothetical.
System. What the public school system, Roland Martin, does is educates 90% of our kids.
Wow,
So
really?
while-
You're
while-
talking to somebody who went to public schools
Right.
K through 12 and 4 years who didn't even go to a private HBCU. I went to all public schools. I ain't never went to a private school. I drove by private schools. I went to a magnet school. But the problem I have with this is that you have black people who have allegiances to one system, and guess what?
I don't agree
They
with
don't
you.
send their
I
kids to
disagree with
public
you.
schools.
I disagree with
The
you,
very
Roland.
people,
I disagree
the
with
very
you.
people who fight Margaret Fortune, state legislators, civil rights leaders, and others who are black, guess where they send their kids? Not to public school.
No kidding.
So it amazes me
Everyone
when
in
I
public
hear.
life can
Well,
say
they
that.
can't put me
Everybody
out
in
of public
life
schools.
can
I
say
tried
that.
to
No.
Members
Not
of
everybody.
Congress and senators are
And that's
sending
my
their kids to
point.
private
And that's
school.
my point. Margaret, go ahead.
Exactly.
Margaret, go
This
ahead.
is
Margaret, go
Dr.
ahead.
Fortune. I'd like to pipe in and say that I've been an education advisor to 2 California governors, and it is always the practice in California public policy that if schools fail, that we pour more money into them. Very rarely do you ever see consequences actually, even if they're on the books in law, implemented beyond technical assistance. So California is a state that very much invests in more money for schools that are struggling, more technical assistance, more professional development. It has not yielded the kinds of results that we would want to see for black students.
Over how many
And
years?
so
Dr. Fortune,
Hold
can I-
on. Now, Cleo asked the question. Go ahead, Doc. Answer.
since the creation of Title I. But when I was in the Davis administration, and right now we're in Newsom, and before that it was Brown, and before that it was Schwarzenegger. So I'm talking about Davis, right? And all these people, except for Davis, served 2 terms.
Are there any white parallels to this? Any white community parallels to this? And I mean very specifically, constantly funding or reaffirming dysfunctional systems that are not effective and keep on going back to the drawing board of ineffectiveness to being effective again for a decade and then being effective again to put some more money in effective for this. Is there a white equivalent to this of apparently not valuing these children's education?
There's not, because basically the achievement, it tracks to wealth. So
There you
you've
go.
got
So that's-
wealthy suburban districts that do well,
Right.
and you have inner city urban districts that don't do as well. Now, I will tell you,
Doc, I
under
gotta ask
Governor Jerry Brown, they significantly increased the funding and tipped the scale towards school districts that were urban. And so, for example, when I first started opening schools, the state allocation back in 2010 per child was $6,000. It has increased to $12,000. But that's compared to $22,000 in New York.
Is
So
this an issue
I
of
would make the
methodology
argument that
or
we all
money?
need to be.
So I need
So
to ask,
hold on.
I would make the argument. Go ahead.
Doctor, somebody asked the question earlier. You were on the phone. The question was, if 80% are failing across California and 80% in one category, 68% in the other, what are your numbers? How are they performing at your schools?
So 58% are meeting standards in reading and writing, and 54% are meeting standards in math.
So, hold on. So, just we compare this. So, 20% across the state are meeting standards in math. At your school is 54%.
That is correct.
32% are meeting the state on reading and writing. And what's the percentage for your schools?
58%.
So in both of those categories, you're 30 points higher than the traditional schools.
No one's arguing that this
No.
woman
Wait.
isn't brilliant.
No one's
arguing that.
Well, you did ask about my results. You did ask about my results. So it would seem to me, if educators have results, then we should be unpacking how they got them.
Margaret, go ahead.
Across the board.
No.
I said you did ask about my results. I was listening, and it would seem to. And you asked about my results.
One second, Margaret, go ahead.
It clearly is. You asked about my results. Are they better? They clearly are. So the question becomes to me, why not ask these public school educators, because charter schools are public schools, how they're getting the result? Why not have some
Which is what
curiosity?
Leo asked.
what I want to ask her, what would you, Dr. Fortune, do to make the public schools better? Because no matter...
Come sit in her damn schools and take some notes.
Why don't she ask?
No, but I'm saying... No. Here's the point.
No. You asked her, what would she do?
I'd be happy to answer the question.
Margaret, go
And the
ahead.
answer is I would hold them to the same level of accountability as public charter schools. I am up for a review, a public review every single year, a public review against every promise that I've made about what my academic goals are and my fiscal accountability and my social emotional wellness of the children. Every goal I've made goes through public examination every year. And every 5 years I go through a review, and if I haven't met my targets, my school's closed. My father is a retired school superintendent. Even if a school is severely under-enrolled in the traditional public school system, nobody wants to close it, even if it makes no sense for it to be open. But in a charter school context, what we know is that if we don't perform, then we're not going to be doing this work. And so there's a tremendous amount of focus on getting results for students. I think the other thing is that I get to select a staff that is very mission-driven. Very, very low percentages of teachers in California public schools are black.
Yeah.
44% of mine are black. And it's because I'm explicitly talking about black students and closing the we're not exclusive. We're a public school. We accept everybody. But we do not change the subject about going for college preparation for black students starting in kindergarten. And it's the narrative and the mission focus which helps us. And I'll tell you, I have been the CEO of this system of schools that I've created for 11 years. In that time, there have been at least 3 superintendents of the Sacramento City Unified School District. And now, because they have a $35 million budget gap, they are anticipated to run out of money by November and be taken over by the state. So there's tremendous volatility and instability in the leadership of many of these urban school districts that our families are counting on to work. In my context, leadership matters, principal leadership matters, and stability matters.
All right, final comment on this topic before I go to the Chicago story. Julian.
Again, Dr. Fortune, kudos to you, but I want to know what you could do to make sure that public schools are more effective. I know that's not your mission, But that's many of our missions.
She just
What
said
can
it.
you do? No, not sit in your classroom.
No, not that. She just said that. First of
Actually,
all.
I run a graduate school of education, and I credential teachers for about 67 traditional public schools, and I license them, and we also license principals, and we teach them how to create the setting that we've created in our schools at a classroom level. Even if their whole school is on board, they can implement it in our classroom. And we also have licensing programs for principals where they can learn to implement this model on a school-wide level. So that's our contribution, which is huge, to disseminating our best practices, because I think it's important. And remember, I'm a public school superintendent's kid. I think it's important that all of our schools succeed, but I also have a sense of urgency that we're not going to wait anymore. Time's up on that.
Dr. Fortune, what you're doing is obviously brilliant. The work you've done is brilliant. But there's no evidence across the board in this country that charters are any better than public schools. Obviously, everybody would want to replicate your work everywhere. I mean, that's clear. But there are great public schools, just like there are great charter schools.
Yes,
there are bad
there
charter
are.
schools, like there's bad public
And
schools.
both can coexist.
All right,
Yeah.
okay.
So why can't? So
And we
here's
should,
the thing.
we should elevate all of
No
those
one's saying
great
nothing about
models into the
coexistence. I'm talking about the
contrary
money.
to research out
I'm
of
talking about the
Stanford
Y'all
money.
keep
that says
hold on,
in
Doc,
urban centers,
hold on one second. That what y'all both are saying is not true. Well, y'all say no one is saying that.
Where's the
that
money
is,
going?
No, that is a fundamental lie.
Is this a
There
private-
are, no, wait a
What's the
minute.
funding? What's the
One
funding
second.
on her
No.
school?
No,
What's the funding
let
on
me
her
answer
school?
you. There are individuals in this country who absolutely say no charter school.
We are not those individuals.
No. When y'all say no
He's
one is
talking about the larger
no,
context.
when y'all say no
We are
one
not
is
those
saying,
individuals.
you should say I'm not saying.
All right,
But
we're
it's
not
not
saying-
true
we're
that
not
no
saying
one
it.
is saying
We're not
that.
saying it.
That's
all I
first.
want, Roland, every parent
But
has
hold on,
the right
wait.
to find
No,
a school
you question
their child
her
thrives.
funding?
I said across
Every
the
parent.
board. I said across the board. There's no statistical evidence
That's
that
correct.
charters and
Yes,
that
and what
charters are
I'm trying to say
That's
to you.
not true.
correct.
That's not true. Look at the
Doc, go
Credo
ahead.
report,
Doc,
Credo
go ahead.
Institute report out of Stanford. That's not true. Stanford
Okay, so
did
there's one
research
report.
that shows
There's
an
no
urban
evidence that
area.
There's no evidence that charters are
There's
better.
no
But there is
There's
evidence.
no evidence that
We
charters
just got
are
some
better.
statistics
Now,
that
obviously,
were.
there's evidence that her school is better, and she should be
Her school is
congratulated.
better,
We-
but charters by and large,
So
you got
here's
horrible charters, you got great
Cleo,
charters.
go ahead.
We just heard some statistics, if I'm not, hearing
You heard
things,
one study.
that we heard 80% of mathematics
Right.
failure.
This is her work.
Hold on one second. In the
Right.
state of California,
Right, you're right.
80% of black kids
Absolutely.
in traditional public schools across the state of California,
In California.
are failing when it comes to the issue of math.
And
Not
68
reading at
when
level.
it comes to reading,
Reading
but
is 68.
But she has better statistics in terms
Yes.
of.
But she
So-
has better
She
statistics.
does.
There are
Yes.
existing statistics, though, because this whole conversation is happening in the context of California.
Right.
Right.
And that there's resistance to replicating what she's doing, use their best practices on a systemic level.
There's no resistance. I'm just making
Wait a
a
minute.
point.
If there's no resistance,
Oh, indeed there are.
oh my
That's
God,
why
you
all
can't
those
say
bills
there's
going
no
through the
resistance.
legislature. They want to cut off the growth. They don't want charter
legislative
schools to
resistance.
grow.
There's legislative resistance to charters.
There's no resistance
Because,
to saying she's
there's
better, Roland.
legislative
Relax.
resistance.
No.
Relax.
Lauren, you're wrong.
Relax.
Lauren, here's the deal.
There's
You-
no proof that charters are better than
Okay,
public schools across
Lauren,
the board.
Lauren,
across
this
the
is-
board.
this
I want you to look at the
Across
This is
Credo
the
report for
mistake.
Not just
Stanford.
California.
See, this is the
Yeah,
mistake that you
okay.
keep making. This is the mistake that you keep
y'all.
making on this one. And that is very simple. I can show you great charters, good charters,
Right.
bad charters. I can show you great traditional schools,
Right. Agree.
good, bad.
Agree.
What I am saying, which somehow you're not hearing, is there are individuals who don't want the great charters.
We knew
who don't
that
want
an
the
hour
good
ago.
charters.
We knew that an hour
That's just
ago.
not the case. The case
It's
is
not
that-
the case.
In California-
Hold up, Dr. Fortune. Are you not dealing with
Yes, sir.
people? Are you not dealing with people who do not want you in business? Yes or no?
Who was arguing that?
Yes.
Are you dealing with the largest funder of Democrats in the state of California who do not want you in business?
Who would that be?
Yes. That's the California Teachers Association. I'm at
Are
the
you-
California Democratic
Who was arguing
Convention
that?
right now.
Are you
and they only
dealing?
join.
Are you dealing with state legislators, including one in your home district, who do not want to see you in business?
Yes.
There Where's your proof?
That sounds like
That ain't
resistance.
proof.
I'm trying to understand what more you need.
What?
That is a case. That is a case and
What?
not proof. Again, I'm
That's
gonna
a
give the
case
sister
and not
all
proof.
the kudos
Oh, my Lord.
that
That's
she
a
deserves.
Right. That ain't even a stretch. I'm
wanna
like,
take-
I don't know what we were drinking before the show, but to somehow, to somehow not believe that there are people who do not want to see the Margaret Fortunes and the Steve Perrys and the Tim Kings and the Gestalts and the others. And what I'm saying is this here. I went to traditional schools. All I'm saying is this here. If I believe in good, great, what works for our kids.
Sure.
And what I
don't
will
disagree
do,
with you.
I'm
I
going to
do
fight
not
black
agree with you.
people who will say, no, we don't want any more of that.
Roland,
because
Roland,
why
roll
can't
it
we
back.
just fix this? Well, hell, we've
Okay, I
been
know
waiting on
wait a
this,
minute.
and
I
that
know
car's
this is your
still
show.
broke,
I
and
know
they
this-
driving us nowhere.
Roland,
90%
I know
of the
this is
kids
your show,
are there.
but let's just roll it back for a minute, if you don't mind. So, I think we all agree that our kids are entitled to the best opportunity to learn,
Absolutely.
whether it's charter, public, whatever. I
Magnet,
think we
homeschool, online
whatever.
school,
I think we all agree
schools,
with that.
private, parochial, you name it.
But I also believe that there's been an attack on public education that we need to repel. I feel very strongly about that. Dr. Fortune has
What's
my
the-
kudos. Tim and Steve Perry, they all have my kudos. But let's look at the public education system that's educating most of our kids.
Do you know
what
what I'm
must we
attacking?
stay?
90% of the kids
80%
are.
not passing math.
We're 90%
I'm
of the
attacking
kids are.
68% not passing
We're
reading.
90%
I
of
agree
the
with
kids.
that.
Well, we can
Dr.
fix
Fortune,
that.
Dr.
But
Fortune,
we
I
can
gotta
fix
go-
that.
But
We
apparently
can
we
fix
can't.
that.
We
Let
haven't.
me know when it happens.
We
Dr.
haven't done
Fortune,
it. 90% of the
make your
kids.
final comment,
For
please.
40 years?
Dr. Fortune, go ahead.
So here's the thing. We should all be, and I consider myself, advocates of public education. There's no reason why 90% of the system needs to turn on 10% and point to them and say, you ought not exist. The thing is, education is competing for resources with health care, with health and welfare programs. We should be united in marching for more support and funding for all of public education. But this constant war that's being launched quite clearly by the California Teachers Association, because they never wanted us to exist in the first place, is a distraction for the black community on the real issues that are afflicting our kids. And if we could somehow coexist and maybe even develop a sense of trust, then we can unpack some of these practices from high-performing environments, whether they be public charter schools or traditional schools that are serving black students well, so that more can have that experience. But as a black community, we need to be holding everybody accountable and not fall into this bickering about what delivery system it is. From my perspective, if you are effective in educating black kids, I'm going to support you regardless of what your delivery
That's right.
system is.
Well, I
Dr.
like that.
Fortune, you said something that was critical. You said that the state of California could very well take over the Sacramento school system. This is how I look at it in terms of what works and what doesn't. If you're killing it and you're outperforming somebody else, I'd rather you run 10 more schools. And you know what? If you're killing it with 10 schools and they still failing, I say give you 10 more. Why? Because it's our children. But what happens is we keep having folks tell us to accept mediocrity and waiting on that promised land for that ship to come in. And we have another generation of black kids who are going through these systems. In fact, when I did your town hall there, I cannot remember the woman. She was a longtime educator. There's an initiative for kids to qualify for the California state schools. Didn't she say only 7 black children in Sacramento qualified on all levels for California state universities? What is something like that?
It was alarmingly low, and that was a retired school superintendent of one of the area districts in Sacramento who's serving on an advisory committee to the Sacramento Unified School District.
Yeah, she said,
a very credible source.
Yeah, she
a
said
full career in traditional public schools.
Yeah, she said that what they do is, she said, in terms of in the Sacramento school district, in terms of students who qualified on all levels to enroll in California state universities, 7 black kids. in the whole district.
And our
That,
tax
to
dollars
me,
pay
is
for
an
that.
abomination.
And our tax dollars pay for that.
Dr. Fortune, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, our tax dollars paid for it.
Right.
Our tax dollars paid for it.
Roland, the Teachers Association is valuing control and tradition, including dysfunctional tradition, over being effective and over being able to replicate systems that have worked to educate black children. They're valuing control, and they're valuing their presence and them being relevant as opposed to being effective.
Right.
And that kind of thinking has messed up a lot of black opportunity.
At the same time, Cleo, I mean, I agree with you like 90%. But I also think that the CTA and the teachers' unions have been very effective in
Keeping their job?
No, protecting black teachers. There is a racism in the educational system that black teachers have been subject to.
Let me tell you
and
something.
we have to deal with that.
I have spoken to the AFT, the NEA. I've spoken to numerous education
Me too.
groups. And you know what happens? When I stand in front of those groups, black teachers, and I say, how many of y'all know teachers, principals, and administrators ain't got no business involved in education? Hands fly up.
No doubt.
Well,
Hands fly up. And so here's the deal. I'm tired of us putting a cover and a new coat of paint on sorry. My deal, I'm telling you, I don't care if the problem that we have is we think that the current school system is a delivery system. It's not the delivery system. If you have 100,000 kids and an X number goes to traditional public charter, magnet, homeschool, online school, parochial, vouchers, or whatever, and it works, I got no complaints. But what I'm not going to do is say no to this, because it should be here, no to vouchers. No, even though we support our kids going to private HBCUs, which is government taxpayer dollars in the form of a voucher. It's called a Pell Grant. Same thing. We ain't got no problem with our kids going to private HBCU.
you ain't got me on that. You ain't got me on that.
No, but we don't. I've been saying
Because the same Pell
we ain't
Grant
got no
goes to
problem.
public education.
No, but guess my point.
Right.
My point is, though, we got no problem when we say
That's what we
who
have to
goes to
wonder.
Morehouse or Spelman or Houston Tillerson or private HBCUs with taxpayer dollars. But then we say, oh, no, I don't like a voucher. It's the same thing. Literally the same thing. What I'm tired of are seeing black people having to bear the brunt of failure. And if we got black educators who can take a charter school and teach our kids better than them, I'm saying I'm down with it, 100%.
I don't mind. I think that anything that a parent does to make sure that their child has maximum efficiency in education, I'm with that.
And that's why they don't care about the NAACP moratorium, which I said when they did it, ain't gonna do squat for black
You
people.
can make the same speech about good public schools, though.
What?
The speech you just made, you can make about good public
And I
schools.
have. And I'm saying coexist. But there are forces who do not want them to coexist. They want to see Tim King shut down. I was yesterday 2 days in Philadelphia. Black woman who was the principal of the year in the Philadelphia school system, who created her own 2 charter schools, who's doing better than traditional schools there. She applied for additional 132 seats over the next 4 years and was denied. Because they said, we don't want to lose the money. Now, damn the kids, but we don't want to lose the money.
No, I got you on that. I'm on a board of a charter school in someplace upstate New York. And
you don't know where it is?
Yeah, I know where it is, but I ain't going
About to say, why? You on the...
Well, anyway, whatever.
I'm on the board somewhere up there. Okay, all right.
No, in Buffalo. But anyway. I mean, I won't call them out. But we have had challenges just getting the school approved because people don't want the school there. I got
Who are the people? No, don't say people. Who are the people?
the state,
And who,
And who in the state?
legislators,
and who that?
And who funds them?
the government.
Who funds,
And
who funds them?
And who the
who funds
government?
the school?
No, who funds
Who
them?
funds the school?
Who funds the school?
And do they look like this?
Who funds
They
the
look
school?
like they look just like that.
And who funds
Okay.
them?
Why don't we just say that?
That's
And
why
who
they're
funds
in your
them?
business.
No.
Who funds the school?
Who funds the legislators who don't want
It's
your
boards-
charter school to do better?
It's boards of education state boards of education who don't want this young sister who's trying to build this thing to have the opportunity to do.
No. That ain't why. No. Hold on. No, Julia. No.
That's why they're.
Roll that back and say it again. State boards and local boards don't want a sister to do what?
To provide educational opportunities for young black children. No, so, we're on the same page up to a point. But I also think that we can't throw public schools
Never
out.
said throw them out. But my problem is they are denying that sister the opportunity to educate our kids and saying, y'all got to stay here. And they failing here.
That's right.
And then black people saying, y'all shouldn't go nowhere. Hell no. If that sister can take 400 and educate them and do well, I want her to get 400 more and 400 more.
So you'll speak at our next fundraiser, right?
I ain't got no problem doing it. That's why I'm doing this school choice is the black choice. But what I'm sick and tired of black people making excuses for failed systems and
Ain't
then
nobody making excuses.
No,
Who's
that's
making
not
excuses? I'm not making excuses. What I'm
People
doing
have made
California,
excuses.
there are people.
Y'all,
I'm not making
that's what I'm talking about.
I'm
But I've been
looking at
dealing with it.
structure.
I'm looking at structure. We
Okay.
do know like if you're dealing
I've
with
been,
that.
hold
Because
up.
you're watching
I've been
this
dealing with them.
special.
Black people. I've been dealing with them.
These black people.
Black civil rights people. Black state legislators. Black city council members.
We do know what
black
you're dealing with.
commission members. No, I know exactly what I'm doing. I've traveled.
No, I said we know what you're dealing with.
No.
You see it.
I'm dealing with
You
black
see it.
people who are standing in the way of black success in education and making excuses. That's what they doing. I'm going to a break.
Yeah, you need to go to break, bro. Okay.
11 people dead in Virginia.
I'm going to the break. Y'all go ahead.
He can go to break. We keep talking.
You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. All right, y'all. According to a report released Thursday by the Samuel Dubois Cook Center on Social Equity at Duke University, man, you talk about this crazy story here. In Chicago, black families lost between $3 to $4 billion in wealth because of predatory housing contracts during the 1950s and 1960s. Between 75% and 95% of homes sold to black families during the 50s and 60s were sold on contract. The price markup on homes sold on contract was 84%. African Americans who bought on contract paid on average an additional $587 in current dollars more a month than they had a conventional mortgage. Joining us right now is Antoine Thompson, Executive Director of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. Antoine, this is one of those things that people don't understand when we talk about wealth gap in 2019. This is one of the reasons. And what happens is white folks want us to talk about it. Y'all stop bringing up slavery. And I keep saying, all right, fine. For the purpose of the conversation, I ain't going to bring up slavery, but you can't ignore what happened during 92 years of Jim Crow. And if you're talking about 50s and 60s, that means that black people who are alive today who were impacted by this generational wealth stolen as a result of racism and white supremacy. Antoine?
Yes, sir.
Go right ahead.
Good evening.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, first I want to thank you for having us on the program. Antoine Thompson, National Executive Director, National Association of Real Estate Brokers.
Antoine, I covered all that. Go ahead. We're talking about.
Yeah, I want to just first say you are right on about the issue of so often, not just conservatives, but even some progressive whites often want African Americans to forget about not only slavery, but Jim Crow, and the fact that from the freedmen's banks all the way up to the present, there has been this constant effort whenever African Americans try to own land to either give us bad loans, bad mortgages, to shut us out of the mortgage market, and in addition to that, come up with different schemes to take property from us, from our farms all the way to the present with our homes. So this issue about contract loans, It's not a new thing, and in fact, it's actually on the rise again in the United States of America.
And so how do we take this report and then speak to folks today? Because we're dealing with, obviously, somebody will say, well, that was 50, 60 years ago. It really doesn't apply. But the reality is, we look at the home ownership rate today, it's actually lower than it was when the Fair Housing Act was passed in '68.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. So there are a few things. One is that I think, too, some of the things we were talking about earlier, we've got to make sure that African Americans and non-African American elected leaders are doing their job to make sure that we're educating our community about protecting the land that they do own, making sure that fewer African Americans are losing their property because of bad mortgages, because of deed theft as well, which is another thing that's happening across the country, making sure that people are not getting into these contract loans. That's not an old thing. In fact, that is on the rise in many urban and rural communities today for African Americans. So we've got to educate our folks. And then we've got to make sure that the laws that are on the books, that they work for us, because just every 20 years or so, there is another effort to either burn our land, steal our land, give us bad loan products in the 40s, and whether you're looking at the contract loans in the 40s, 50s, or 60s, or if you're looking post Fair Housing Act from 68 to 71, there were a number of bad loan products that were sanctioned by the federal government that were also given to African Americans. And then we talk about in our current era of the early 2000s to the present, when we talk about subprime mortgages, and the fact that many people got bad loans, and African Americans disproportionately lost their wealth, lost their homes, destroyed their families, devalued properties, and entire neighborhoods. That requires consistent advocacy on behalf of not only our elected officials, but all community stakeholders.
All right, Antoine Thompson, we appreciate it. Thank you so very much with NARAP. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
This is what amazes me. First of all, this is why I really can't stand any of these cable news networks. I can't stand any of them, because when they have any of these conversations, when we talk about resources and wealth, things along those lines, I swear none of these people have ever read a damn book. They've never understood the history of America. And I just sit there and I look. First of all, I can't even watch them anymore because they don't want. No, it ain't just dumbed down.
No, but
just
they don't want
just
to deal
always
with
being dumb.
No, they can't deal with history, Roland.
No, they
What
can't
this brother
at all.
has lifted up here is a history of contract housing,
Right.
which is a history
Covenants.
that goes all the way back. Here's the words that they will not use: economic envy. And this is a thing that I've been doing a lot of research on lately, starting with Memphis, Ida B. Wells, looking at Wilmington, looking at Tulsa.
Yes.
And,
Right.
here's what
How
happened.
dare you Negroes
Right.
go make money?
In Tulsa, the governor appointed a commission to find out why they had the massacre. They want to call it right. It was a massacre.
Yes.
The answer was this: too many N-words had too much money. That was the answer. Too many black people.
They did not like us having hotels and bars and restaurants
And
clothing
libraries,
stores.
and libraries, and
They
hospitals.
like, oh
We
hell
took
no,
care-
we
we
got
took care of ourselves.
We got to torch y'all.
So you had some little nonsense of a black guy. jostled
Allegedly.
some-
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Wait, and there is some evidence that they knew each other. By the way, just footnote. But anyway, and you go to Wilmington, where a white woman, her name was Helen Firth, first woman in the United States Senate, the itch, actually, and I said itch, said we should lynch 1,000 black men a week to save our women's chastity. And so a brother, Alexander Manley, wrote a piece that said, excuse me about your chastity, but some of y'all be in love with us. And he broke that down. But Ida B. Wells showed that 1/3 of all lynchings had to do with sex. The rest were economic. Of
That's
the
it.
1/3 that had to do with sex, half were consensual. And as he said,
Roland.
when these
Right.
with white girls got caught, they said rape, 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 rape,
Cleo.
rape.
You said that you can't stand these cable networks because they're dumb or they're not giving information. My perspective is that they know history.
I don't think.
I think they know history quite well, and they play dodgeball.
So actually, to be
Do you
perfectly,
think they know
hold on,
history?
to be perfectly honest with you, they ain't that smart. I mean, first of all, no. Look, I've had to sit in those meetings, and I'm like, any of y'all read? No, they don't read. No, they literally. The fundamental problem here is what you have white hosts, white producers, white bookers, white executives who live in a white world. And they know nothing about us. I mean, I'll tell you, look, when I was at CNN, I was filling in for Campbell Brown, 2 months. She went on maternity leave. And so it was rough for them because they were like, one, they thought I was just supposed to be like just happy, just like, oh, I'm just sitting here. I'm going to sit here, just fill in. So whatever y'all give me, I'm going to read. That didn't happen. They had one producer, Claire. Claire was so hot. Claire couldn't have. I was way too opinionated on what's going to go on the show. Claire just said, I ain't working with him. Send me to the Anderson Cooper show while he filling in because I ain't working with him. Yeah, Claire. I'm going to call your name. But here's what happened. We were talking about education, and I said, book Jonathan Kozol and book Floyd Flake.
Oh, boy. They didn't know what they were.
No
who that
idea
is. Right, exactly.
Floyd Flake. And we were in the newsroom. I said, I'm sorry. Don't none of y'all know Reverend Floyd Flake, member of Congress, pastor of Jamaica Queens, president of Wilberforce? No idea. No, we and our history don't even exist to them. So you bring it up, and they go, really?
But Roland.
Oh, my God. Cleo, go ahead. I'm going to go to you. Cleo, go ahead.
Every February is Black Folks a relatively relevant month.
No. So only 3 black people in February.
Let me
Dr. King, and Dr. King.
Let me finish.
And no sisters.
Let me finish.
I just named the 3 black people they named.
Okay, right.
Dr. King, Reverend Dr. King, and Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. That's the only 3 black people who get mentioned. Go ahead.
But let me finish. Let me see if we can do this without me being interrupted. Let's see if this can happen. Let's try. And I've literally purposely studied and focused on this phenomenon. Every February, y'all black people are relatively relevant, and they do a black thing. One year, Anderson Cooper did a study, a recreation of the
Ken Clark doll study.
The doll study.
I was there.
And the doll study, the terminology they used to describe black people who chose the white doll was that they had a white bias. And one of the, which is a racist, white supremacist, milquetoast way of describing internalized white supremacy myth. But anyway, they talked about the fact that everybody in the study, these were children, all had an anti-black bias.
Yep.
And all had white bias. And then they described a horrific phenomena that distorts black self-concept, but they went on to the next thing. They didn't deconstruct it and talk about the casualties of it.
Well, why
I didn't expect. I don't expect.
Because it was only about the doll.
I didn't expect it.
It wasn't about going deeper than mustard on a hot dog.
Right. So my point is that there's some things they know, but they don't GAF. You know what that means? I know you know what GAF means. Mm-hmm. They don't give a frying pork chop.
What is
and there's things they know about in terms of
it's called GAB.
Murder and black people. They know all about these contexts, but they don't really care.
No, Cleo. When I say, first of all, there are some who have no clue, don't know, and don't care.
A lot of us don't know and don't have a clue either.
That's very true. Somebody on YouTube just said that. But I'm going to tell you, Lauren, I'm going to go to you. Julianne mentioned Tulsa. Mm-hmm. Tim Madigan, we worked together for Fort Worth Star Telegram. Mm-hmm. Tim Madigan grew up in Iowa. The best, I mean, he was like lauded as the best writer in the whole newspaper. When he started working on the book on Tulsa Race Riot, he worked on the article, then he started working on the book. And it was as if he got hit by lightning. No, seriously. He went, when he read the stories of elderly black people kneeling in their homes and white folks busted in, putting guns to the back of their heads and blowing their brains out, Tim Madigan said, oh my God. He said, now, for the first time in my life, everything that has happened with black people where there's been outrage, I now understand. When I interviewed him, he said, I grew up in Iowa. I ain't seen anybody black till I went to college. He said, and every time something happened, Rodney King,
right.
He said, I really didn't understand why black people were upset.
Right.
He said, but it wasn't until doing the research on the Tulsa race riots. And then he started tearing up. He said, then I got pissed. He said, I got pissed because I was never taught it.
Right.
I had no idea.
Nobody teaches
and,
any of this.
right. And now, and the reason I'm saying this because he just passed a bill in Oregon where a little kid pushed it through mandating Holocaust teaching
Right.
in Oregon schools. I ain't got no problem with that.
But what about
But the
enslavement?
Holocaust did not happen here.
Did not happen here.
It happened
Enslavement
in
here.
Germany.
Well, the thing is,
and that's where we are.
both of you guys are right. Actually, I think I'm leaning more with Cleo here because when I see people on TV like Jeffrey Lord, I know they know.
Oh, no, we know.
I know they know.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
there's an agenda. All right.
Let's
So
say
the
there's
other thing though too is that one of the key components of racism that nobody ever talks about is deleting people and ignoring them and making them invisible.
That's right.
So it is conscious
That's right.
that I make your life, your history invisible. So to acknowledge it in any way is to give it power.
Right.
People understand that when they book guests and when they book contributors and the type of contributors they book that know nothing about what we're talking about.
No. Let's be just real clear. There was a meeting in 2012. And in the meeting they said, we need to book us another Roland Martin. And somebody in the meeting said, we already got Roland Martin. They said, no.
We
We need to book another Roland Martin.
Right.
No, you want Roland Light.
And people in the room kind of like, oh, right. Because they didn't like black Roland Martin.
And what they
And
didn't
see,
like
the
is
whole
you
thing
bringing
with
up
people-
things that make them uncomfortable, that are
And
factual,
that's-
because you know your history.
And that, because I read.
You're dangerous.
And that's the
In that
piece. And
context.
so,
So the whole thing is
I ain't going to sit on the air
See, they want
and embrace and love Jeffrey Lord.
Right.
So, you know,
They
so
want
the
the
other piece of
entertainment
it is
piece.
this.
They want the black
They keep
entertainment
using-
piece. They want the
keep
black
diluting
minstrel.
us.
The black minstrel that doesn't really know
Or
the history.
they want the black,
And
can we
that's-
just all get along? And there's some folk I ain't getting along with. But go ahead.
There's this people of color crap, which is a kumbaya crap, which disallows you saying black,
That's a
black,
form
black,
of
black,
erasure.
black.
It's a form of erasure.
And so, at some level, what Lauren said is correct about erasure, because you've erased Tulsa. Like
Right.
a lot of people.
You've erased this.
Wilmington. You've erased the first lynching that Ida B. Wells covered.
Right.
People want to talk about Ida B. Wells as a journalist. Let's talk about her
What
as
she,
an
what she wrote about. No.
Yes.
They want to say Ivy Wells is a great journalist, but what did she
and the
write
first
about?
lynching that she wrote about
And
was
the
the
one-
lynching of her goddaughter's father, who had the nerve to open up a grocery store across the street from a white man's store. That's why he was lynched.
I'm saying all of this for the people who are watching, because I'm about to go to our next story, because this ties into it. I'm saying all of this because you have an election going on. And I'm telling y'all right now, might as well get used to it. Y'all are going to be, it's going to be, what was that movie, The Unbearable Likeness or something?
Of being?
I don't know.
I forgot what it was.
I remember that.
You
I'm
about
old.
to deal
I
with the
remember that.
unbearable likeness of whiteness.
Oh,
Because you're not going to hear folks on air link the story we just did to present day. You're not going to hear them link these historical issues to what's happening today. You're not going to hear them link it in the military. You're going to hear them link it when it comes to economic policies and housing policies because they refuse to want to deal with it. And so my challenge to all y'all black folks who's sitting on MSNBC or sitting on CNN, even the black folks at Fox News, you got to bring blackness to the table every day.
black.
You gotta be willing to challenge them. And then if y'all some black people, and let me also just be real clear, Cleo said it. I ran the Chicago Defender, which was the blackest of newspapers.
Yeah.
I changed our masthead to honest, balanced, truthful, unapologetically black. The people who owned the paper were black millionaires from Detroit who literally said, y'all really think we should have that on the, because when we go to white advertisers, what they gonna think? And I went, you a black paper. I think they know you black. They literally were afraid of the unapologetically black part.
We're the only group that does that.
And that to me
Okay, that's
Yeah.
is so insane and what we have to deal with.
That's
And so I'm just letting y'all know
Not scared.
you're about to
Nobody's
deal
not
with this in
scared.
2020.
Nobody's scared.
And you're not necessarily going to hear a lot of very specific black questions because they don't want to hear it. And the DNC just announced that they got pressure, they're going to mandate that at least there be a female moderator in every single debate. I want y'all to watch the questions that get asked. And I'm going to tell you right now, even the questions in the black debate, you might get 2 real questions, but I'm just saying. Folks, Grambling State University has announced that Nicole Roebuck will lead as the university's new chair of the Department of Music and its first woman director of bands. Dr. Roebuck for the oversee operations for the world-famous Tiger Marching Band. So congratulations, the first woman band director in the history of Grambling State University.
All right.
And so we certainly want to congratulate her. All right, folks, we got to go. We went over our time here, but it's always good. But, you know, when you black and you own it, you can make that call. Be sure to support Roland Martin Unfiltered by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Join our Bring the Funk fan club. Of course, we have the items for sale. Buy copies of my book, dealing with President Barack Obama, my wife's book as well. All books that you buy, we personally autograph. And so if you go to Amazon and buy it, ain't no personal autograph. You got to go to RolandSMartin.com to get the personal autograph. If you are part of our fan club, you have a discount code when you go check out, you get a discount on those books as well. And so we certainly want you to support us. And again, this is critically important. Y'all ain't gonna hear this conversation anywhere else. Y'all ain't gonna hear the spirited conversation about charter schools and traditional schools anywhere else. So if we don't learn to financially support our own, y'all heard Julian talk about Tulsa. Guess what? It was black people who were supporting black hotels and restaurants and ice cream parlors and things along those lines. And so we got to have black folks who will stop saying, oh, we want to see this, but then we want somebody else to pay for it. I'm just telling you right now, if you don't support this show, it's not going to exist. And you're going to be back to asking Chris Hayes and Rachel Maddow and some other folks on CNN, please, baby, please, can you please cover us every now and then? On this show, we don't beg to cover black stories. We do it every single day. You have a great weekend. Holla! You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Hey fam, want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? The blackest show on all of digital, cable, and broadcast. Check out our audio podcast. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Press play. You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it. Hey fam, want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? The blackest show on all of digital, cable, and broadcast. Check out our audio podcast. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Press play. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.